got with me today Ted Talks Ball, and so it's going to be a good episode. I know you guys are used to seeing Ted in different surroundings, but he's on my show today. And but before we get into any of that, we're going to get into the intro. And once again, it is Peter Lucas. We got Ted Talks Ball today on the Niner Fanatic podcast. Ted, so I haven't had you on, I haven't talked to you in a while. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on the socials and where they can find your channel at?
Yeah, sure, no problem. You can find me at TedH6 on Twitter, TED Talks Ball on YouTube. Those are my two main things. You can also find my articles at all49ers.com or all49ersfn on Twitter, at all49ersfn on Twitter. Those are the main areas. I've got an Instagram account, but it's mostly just for folks that aren't on YouTube.
Right on. And once again, you can find Niner Fanatic Podcast on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, and anywhere where you can get your audio podcast. I don't care where you get it, just get it. But today we're going to talk some. It's been, let's be honest, it's been kind of a slow news cycle for the 49ers, a little slower than normal, but we're going to do our best to come up with some really good. I think we've got some really good talking points to talk about with Ted today, and at least to get his point of view. The people on the fans of my show have been kind of hearing me, kind of just hearing my voice the last couple of weeks, and it'll be good to have somebody to sound off like kind of a soundboard with. But I'm stoked. We got Bebop Jones coming into the chat. Appreciate you coming through, brother. Always a pleasure. But the first thing I want to start talking about is Trey and Brock. Like we heard a lot of things this past week about, like who's going to be the guy. It's a lot of people just weighing in, players weighing in, the media weighing in. And what's your opinion on Trey and Brock, and what it's going to take for Trey to kind of unseat Brock?
Well, I mean, I think we'll find out a lot more of this in 2 days. Day after tomorrow, the 22nd, Brock has his surgery on his UCL. There's a lot of optimism that it can be, a repair, this internal brace repair surgery, or some sort of hybrid surgery between that and a full Tommy John. But there's definitely a chance that it ends up being a full Tommy John. So let's just assume that you mean the best case scenario, which would be, I think we're saying a 6-month return to play. He would start throwing around 3 months, but really wouldn't be ready to play until about 6 months. So, that'll be 2/22. So that would put us out to 8/22, August 22nd as a realistic return to play date. That's without any complications or anything like that or setbacks, which is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the second or third preseason game. So he would miss all of OTAs, all of training camp, most of preseason, which is going to put him at a big disadvantage coming back, because he's going to need to get back up to playing speed. Now, if he can really be ready by week 1, I don't know how Trey Lance unseats him for that role, just because, as well as I think Trey Lance will play, it's all preseason, and Brock has this 6-game winning streak in the regular season, 2 playoff games that he won. Basically, he won every game that he finished for us. So I don't know how Trey unseats him right away. I did say, before Purdy got injured, that I thought that Trey could still end up being our number one quarterback moving forward, just because, or deeper into the future, I should say, just because of his higher ceiling. Because I feel like there's more of a chance of Trey learning to do the things that Brock does well, like accuracy, like decision making, pocket presence, poise, leadership. He won't be probably ever as quick as Brock is in those 10-yard splits, but I do feel like top end speed, Lance is quite a bit faster for breakaway speed. And I think those two things might ultimately cancel out if he's making the right decisions. So I think the chances of Trey learning to do what Brock can do are much higher than, I joke around and say, than Brock learning to be 6'4" and have a cannon of an arm. And people say, well, Brock, we could have won it all this year with Brock. And I agree, we could have. I'm not saying we would have, but definitely had he not been injured in the NFC Championship game, I had every confidence that we could beat any team in the league if we were playing well. However, some things are going to start changing, though. Some of, we're going to pay Nick Bosa north of $30 million a year. Armstead's contract is ballooning to like $25 million a year or something around that range. And there's some others that are all getting large. And so we probably won't have quite the surrounding cast for Brock Purdy as we had for him in 2022. It looks like we'll have most of the weapons, the key weapons, but McGlinchey, big question mark. Brendel, Brunskill, all question marks. On defense, obviously, it looks like we're going to lose Jimmy Ward. Looks like Tishawn Gibson might retire. Who knows when Mosley will be back to playing? Who knows if that'll even be for us? I'm confident that we'll get Mosley back, but when he'll be back to 100% are some question marks. So, long answer is, I think it's going to be Trey's job to lose, not because he will have necessarily earned it, but just because I don't think Purdy will really be ready by week 1.
And I agree. I agree that he won't be ready for. When I say ready for week 1, I mean if his surgery goes as planned and he comes back in the middle of training camp or whatever the case is, I think that he will have a chance because then they'll have preseason to show that he's healthy. But I just look at Trey had he had a whole nother is gonna have a whole nother off season to get the things that he does well, get better at the things that he does well and get better at the things that he doesn't do well and work on those things. I think he's working on those things right now. I think that interview with Quincy Avery told you a lot about his mentality going in. And I just think that I like Trey Lance. I like Brock, but I looked at the situation. I have this feeling that Trey is going to take over this job and that Brock is going to be the backup just because I think that, just like you said, you can't teach 6'4" and a cannon of an arm. And I think if Trey looks anywhere near like he's taking a step forward with because the important thing for Trey, we all know this, is the taking a step forward in making the read, trusting his eyes and what he's seeing, and trusting his reads and throwing the ball and getting the ball out on time. Those are the things that he needs to work on. Those are the things that Purdy does well. And those things don't require a can of an arm. They don't require 6'4". But it's also the hardest thing to learn. And so if Trey comes out trusting what he sees and he starts throwing the ball on time, I think it's going to be tough sledding for Brock to make up that the physical ability. And the real test for Trey, in my opinion, is the fact that I don't think he's going to get a fair evaluation because he's going to be expected to do things that Brock isn't expected to do. And Brock, they're not going to be running a bunch of RPO and QB option with Brock. They're just not going to do it. And another reason why I like Trey over Brock is I know that Trey is coming off an injury, but so is Brock. And we talk about Brock only played what 7, 8 games. I think he played 8 games. Um, the the issue with me with Brock is that he was hurt too. He got hurt. He got his oblique injury in the middle of that. Then he got put out entirely. If he had started the season, he would have been done what 8 games in, halfway through, like almost halfway through the season. Who's to say that he isn't just because people like to say Trey Lance is injury prone. Who's to say that Brock isn't going to be also because Brock is a little guy. People need to he played great, but he is a little guy. And I'm hoping that he can work towards I don't know if bulking up would even help him. He's just little, and him getting hit may end up getting may end up shortening that. That's why I lean towards Trey more so than anything. How do you feel about Brock's stature and and how he could look for the long term?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all your sentiments. And the other thing I would just throw in there is that we haven't seen Trey Lance with Christian McCaffrey yet. And we've barely seen him with Kittle. So, I mean, to when we're trying to compare these two guys, we're not comparing apples to apples right now as far as similar situations. Most of the season last season on 2021, when Lance played, Mike McGlinchey was out, right? He was already out by certainly by the Texans game. He did play during the Arizona game, but he didn't play well. So ultimately, I think the O-line played a little bit better for Purdy this season, and with Trey Lance, when he lost, the team was struggling both before and after Trey played, and when this team was playing well, Trey Lance won. So I just think that a lot of this stuff of Brock, he just wins. He did. He was undefeated in games he finished, and I love him for that. And I do like both quarterbacks. I mean, I want to make it clear, I'm not bashing Brock. I'm super glad we have both options. I just hope we do have both for 2023. And I just do think ultimately long term that Trey Lance will end up being our QB1. But there it is an if he can learn to do some of those things that Brock does so well, or at least close enough that his physical attributes overwhelm the competition, and if he can stay healthy. And yeah, they've both shown the ability to get injured or inability to stay healthy, and so it'll be interesting to see what we do for other options, because obviously we can't really go into the season with these being our only two options at quarterback.
For sure. And that kind of transitions into the next question. Who do you think that they should bring in as that third QB? Should it be a veteran, or should they try and draft somebody?
Like Lamar Jackson? No, I'm just kidding. It's funny. I was away last week with some family, and some of my wife's family is from Baltimore, and they're not real happy with Lamar Jackson.
They got to be going crazy.
they really are just like, go baby, go. We don't want to pay him all this money. I said, but you guys never got him a wide receiver, and they said, well, no wide receivers want to play with him. And so, I guess there's different ways of looking at everything. I said, well, is that Lamar or is that Greg Roman, right? Because we have no love lost in Niners fan base for Greg Roman, their offensive coordinator who left now after this last season. But that's not realistic. Lamar is going to require a lot of picks, and he wants Deshaun Watson, I should say, kind of money. So let's forget about Lamar. So there's some other interesting names floating around out there. I mean, Derek Carr, you have to assume that he wants to be a starter somewhere. And even though he's clearly not going to make the 40 mil that the Raiders cut him to avoid paying, he's still going to be out of our range. I think I like Jacoby Brissett. Damian Lee just brought that up. I think that's a very good option for us. My only question there again would be: are we going to want to pay what he will cost? I'm thinking he's worth easily 10 to 15 million a year, and I don't know that we're going to want to spend that much on. That's assuming that, again, that the Brock Purdy surgery goes as well as possible. We have on Thursday, we're all saying, hey, he's going to be ready August 22nd. Then this quarterback is going to be basically like a camp body.
Mm-hmm.
And also, ultimately, we're hoping for that person to be our third string quarterback into the season. But I do like Jacoby Brissett a lot. I think Teddy Bridgewater is another name. Mariota is another name. I really like Tyler Huntley from the Ravens. Not that he's that good, but just more of these quarterbacks that are like Trey Lance. Because what I noticed last season was, here we go, all offseason, OTA, preseason, camp, and everything, all offseason, and we're prepping for this Trey Lance style offense. And Trey gets injured, first quarter of week 2 against the Seahawks. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, scrap all that. We're putting Jimmy G in. And say what you will about Jimmy G. He did a good job coming in for us. But I think he would have done a better job if we had been practicing that offense all off season, rather than having to scrap everything we had practiced. So my hope would be a more mobile QB as our third QB. Like a Tyler Huntley, a Mariota. I don't know that Teddy Bridgewater qualifies anymore, but I also have always kind of like Gardner Minshew. So, but ultimately, I have no idea who they're going to. Yeah. Who do you think, Pete? I mean, I'm curious to know your thoughts.
I look at these guys because you mentioned Gardner Minshew. He's under contract, from what I understand. They would have to trade for him, and then
never mind.
The other guy that you mentioned, Mariota, I think is under contract also. I think so. But I like your Tyler Huntley idea. I look at, and I know 49er fans, I talked about this on my last show, and I know 49er fans probably think I'm crazy, but the Sam Bradford, or not Sam Bradford, what's his name?
Darnold.
Sam Darnold. I don't know where I got Bradford from. But Sam Darnold from Carolina, I think he is a guy that has never, ever had a good system. And I think that, but I do think he has ability, and that's a guy that you could put on it. He should be fine as a third stringer, but he actually has ability. And
he's pretty mobile. I mean, I wouldn't call him mobile, but he's not a statue.
Exactly. That's the whole point. Is he's pretty much got the same athleticism as Brock Purdy, I would say. So I like him. And if we went draft, they're going to pick somebody that's similar to Brock Purdy. I mean, everybody seems to be enamored with this Jake Haney from Fresno State. Hayner from Fresno State. So I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that either. I think that with the situation being as it is, and if Brock, it all depends on the situation. If Brock is ready to go come week 1, I could see them going Jake Hayner, or somebody equivalent. But if Brock isn't going to be back until like mid-season, I'd see them going full veteran, and that's when I see them going maybe a Jacoby Brissett. But this is the thing: they're going to have to know pretty quick, because free agency is going to hit, and they're going to lose out on those higher caliber guys are going to go pretty quick. So it's all, I love the offseason just because we have all these ideas, and then most of them don't happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's always fun to speculate, but free agency comes quicker than anybody anticipates. And then I think we've got the combine in next week? Is it next week? It might be the week after.
Yeah. I think it's not far.
I think it
was 15 days from a week ago, so 8 days. I think it's a week from Saturday.
Next week. So all of that's going to change everything, and how people look at how these teams look at free agency and the draft. So all the things that we're talking about this week are going to change again. So stay tuned.
No
But
doubt about it. Another, just to muddy the waters a little more, another name that I thought of while we were talking, one that might have
Stetson
helped us
Bennett.
this season if the Rams hadn't, blocked us, is Baker Mayfield. He'll
Oh,
probably be too
yeah.
expensive too, but I think he's another one to consider.
Oh, and Damien saying that Philly wants a second for Gardner. Yeah, I was like, once if the Niners have to trade for anybody, Niners aren't trading for anybody. They have really little to no assets, and I mean, unless it's, I could see them trading for like a defensive person or whatever, because you could probably get away with it with a third or something like that. But yeah, I do not see them trading for a quarterback for sure.
And then you brought up draft. Yeah. Jake Hayner, Fresno State, I believe, somewhere in the Central Valley here in California.
Mm-hmm.
His mom, Julie Hayner, is a news anchor here in the Bay Area,
Oh wow.
which is kind of funny. Yeah.
And that's
Um,
that's why they're bringing it up. Like he has ties, so
yeah, he has ties, and then a lot of people are saying he's like Purdy, but with a little bit of a bigger arm, maybe not quite as mobile, or not quite as quick, but a little bit bigger arm, so kind of comparable overall, maybe to a Brock Purdy. And obviously, with Brock's success, a lot of quarterbacks like him are getting a lot more love in the draft and the combine than they normally
the guy,
would.
the guy from TCU, what was his
Yeah,
name? Yeah, he got a lot of love for the
is that
Senior Bowl. They said he
is that
looked really good.
Levis,
No, that's
Texas Tech?
I can't. It
Somewhere
would
else in
be
Texas.
Levis is Kentucky, right?
Oh, sorry, you're right. Yes.
And this
Oh,
guy is
TCU. Yes, Stroud was his
TCU.
name. Not Stroud.
He seems like a
But yeah,
gamer. Like he just
well,
seems
yeah,
like a good gamer.
when he beat Michigan, right? I mean, that was
Yeah,
huge, that game.
but
He
I
played
love his
really well
demeanor.
in it. Yeah,
I
no doubt
love it.
about it.
Yeah. So.
One that might be a little more approachable for us, it would be like the Stanford quarterback, Tanner McKee, who I guess is 6'6" and has a pretty good accuracy and is fairly mobile. That might be another option too if we don't end up with Jake Hayner, more of a local option, and later round option, 5th, 6th round potential.
Yeah, which is probably when they're going to be looking, because they're not going to. I don't see it being a higher pick, like one of
No,
our
because
higher picks at least.
we got the 3 comp thirds, we got the 4th. Those are
Yeah,
going to be for key positions. Then we have a bunch of comp 5ths. That's where you might start to see it our 6th or 7th.
yeah,
So similar to our friend Brock Purdy. Cool.
yeah.
No, I think
So
it's a muddy situation to say the least on quarterback.
it's that's what, like I said before, that's what I love so much about the offseason. It's so many options that you really, and the 49ers keep everything so tight-lipped about everything that you really don't know. You really don't know what's going to happen from day to day. Like Shanny said, we could all die tomorrow. and but it just cracks me up, like how we like all these guys. The draft, there is nobody, I'll say it again, there is no one on the planet that knew who Spencer Burford was before the
No,
draft.
not me. I
Nobody
definitely
knew
feel
who
you.
Nick Zakelj was. Nobody knew who Samuel Womack was. And
That's
it's
right.
like, so you just don't know with this team. Like they probably, and what's funny is that when you look back at the draft, the scouting, all the scouting sites, they actually had those guys in those realms of, but we just didn't know who they were, so we're not even looking to look for them. But it was pretty. I thought that was pretty funny. But I want to move on to, of course, it wouldn't be a 49, like before he gets out of here finally. What happens with Jimmy G? Because we know he's not going to be here. We know he's not going to be here. So where do you think
Fingers
Jimmy goes?
crossed.
Yeah, no, I'm speaking it into existence. He will not
There
be
you go.
here.
Good man.
So
Good man.
where do you think he goes?
I mean, I think the natural fit for him is the Raiders. I
Mm-hmm.
think, you got Josh McDaniels, who coached him with the Patriots, so he knows how to use Jimmy in a system that would be friendly to his strengths. And I said repeatedly to the Jimmy stands out there when I was arguing with them, like, oh, just watch when Jimmy leaves, he's not going to do well because he's not going to have Kyle. He's not going to have Debo. He's not going to have Kittle, Ayuk, CMC, Juice, Jennings, all our elite weapons. I mean, I think we have at least in 2022, I thought we had the best weapons group in the NFL.
Easily.
So the Raiders, however, are right there in that conversation. Mm-hmm. Maybe not overall depth of weapons like we have, but they're a big three. I mean, come on, Devontae Adams is like a top 3 receiver. Waller, he had some injury issues this last season, but he's a top 3 to 5 tight end, at least for receiving. He can't block himself out of the paper bag, but for receiving, he's 6'6" with 4.4 speed. And he has good hands. He's a real good receiving tight end. And then obviously Josh Jacobs winning the rushing title this season. So I think the Raiders make a lot of sense. Obviously the Jets need a quarterback. And they've got Garrett Wilson out there, and they've got that young running back who did his ACL this last season. And obviously they've got Saleh, who knows him. The Texans would be another option because of
did the Jets, not to cut you off, did the Jets find an offensive coordinator yet?
I don't know. I don't know.
I'll have to look into that.
I think so. But honestly, I'm going to claim ignorance on that one.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that.
So the Jets, somebody threw out Miami. I mean, I could see him as a backup for the Dolphins, but unless Tua can't play, there's no way Jimmy G is going to beat out Tua in my mind. I think Tua is a much better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. Although this whole concussion thing, who knows if he should or will play again? I don't know. It's a pretty scary situation he's in. Who else will we talk about?
So I mean, you got
Tampa Bay has come up as an option. I think.
I mean, the Texans. Did you already say the Texans?
I did say the Texans because of D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah, because of D'Amico.
But I think they're going to go high on a quarterback in the draft, since they're right up there. I think the Raiders is my pick. If you ask me one team that I think makes the most sense for him and that team, I think it's the Raiders.
Yeah, I agree with you as far as the Raiders being the one that makes the most sense. I think he's going to end up on the Texans personally, just because I think that they're the only one. I think that it's going to be a stopgap situation, and I think the Raiders are looking for their quarterback for the foreseeable future. I don't think they're looking for a stopgap. I think that the Texans are going to draft somebody, and I think that they want Jimmy in front of them for at least a couple of seasons just so he can sit. Like, that's my personal opinion. That's what I would do if I was them. But there's also, I mean, you got a couple of teams out there that really need I think Jimmy at this point is a stopgap option. I don't think anybody's going to be looking for him to be the guy. I don't think, I know that a lot of 49er fans have more, I don't want to say respect, but they think that Jimmy does more than he actually does. But I don't think that teams think that of Jimmy. I think we saw that this last offseason when it was time to start trading for quarterbacks. 49ers weren't able to get what they wanted for him. And so I look at him like a guy that's just that's going to be a stop guy. I think people respect him enough to know that he can win you games and he can run an offense. He does bring respect to the locker room, but he's a starting level quarterback basically, but he's not he's not going to be the guy that you're going to you're not going to go forward with Jimmy Garoppolo as the only guy, especially even if you just think about his injury history. But I look at him, and I really think it's the Texans. Oh, and Nathaniel Hackett is the offensive coordinator for the Jets now, the guy that was the head coach for
the Broncos.
And which would still be comfortable for Jimmy, because I think that's another aspect of it. There's so many people, coaches out there that are running the basics of what Kyle runs, that I think he's going to fit in a lot. He'll be able to fit in a lot of places. And So, I mean, but Nathaniel Hackett, I mean, I still think he could go to the Jets, but I think that they're talking to Derek Carr. I don't know how that's worked out. I mean, he was supposedly spending the weekend over there, and he didn't come out of there with the job, so who knows? And but yeah, that's I think the Texans.
A lot of people were saying Rodgers to the Jets too, but I don't know if there's any.
Well, Rodgers said he absolutely doesn't want to go there.
Okay, well that'd do it. So is he out of his 4-day blackout session that he did?
Who knows? I try not to pay attention to him, but Twitter, like it just pops up, and I'm just not a fan.
It sounded like some kind of torture. Like, I think it's outlawed by the Geneva Convention, but he did it to himself imposed. Bebop brought up an interesting one. The Colts, they're kind of the kings of these retread quarterbacks towards the end of their careers. I mean, I don't think Jimmy's quite as advanced as obviously Matt Ryan in his career, but that's another interesting option.
Yeah, I mean, they're in complete flux. That's another situation where they're going to be drafting a guy, and probably. So, what better way than just to have a stopgap, bring him in for what? I know that the going rate. I mean, I looked at Spotrac, and I respect Spotrac a lot, but they have his market value at like 35 mil.
Jimmy?
Jimmy. I cannot bring myself to think he's going to get that much. Like
35 minus 20, maybe.
I'm thinking like 15 to 20, maybe, only because the salary cap is going up. But I cannot bring myself to think that Jimmy is going to get 35 mil. And he might. If he does, I will get on my show and I will apologize. But I just don't see it. Don't see it happening. I just can't. I could not in good conscience. But could I say that? But what? Who do you think? Talking about like kind of free agency and like where guys are going to go. Who do you think is the 49ers' number one target in free agency? And what is it going to take to bring that guy in?
Oh, good question. I mean, I'm hoping it's somebody like Daron Payne.
Oh, that's mine too.
Or Hargrave. A good defensive tackle to go next to Eric Armstead. I mean, one that I think is realistic, that I think would be a really good fit, that I think wouldn't be so hard to get, is Hayden Hurst, the tight end. I really think we need some help for Kittle, not just because of what happened in the NFC Championship game, but I've been saying since like the 2020 draft, like we need a tight end who can run or who can block and who can catch like Kittle. I mean, not exactly like Kittle, but in that same mold. And I think that's why Tyler Kroft got so much play time this season, is because he was our most versatile tight end after Kittle. Warner can basically only block, and Dwelly can basically only catch. And so those are some interesting ones. There's been a lot of talk about C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I think he's a hell of a player. I mean, if I'm going to be petty about it, or not really petty, but just like sticking true to myself, which is I'm not a big fan of players that I think are dirty, and I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson's a little bit dirty. I'm just going to say that. So I hope we don't end up getting him, then I have to root for him and eat my words there. But I just noticed it when he was with the Saints, and I noticed it when he was with the Eagles as well. So even that big hit that he put on, trying to remember who was running, and he just put his helmet right in his chest towards the end of the Super Bowl. Like, that's the crown of the helmet. You can't lead with your crown. That's illegal. Yeah. So, but there's been a lot of talk about C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Obviously, Bradbury is a free agent as well for the Eagles. Real fine cornerback. And then obviously McGarry from the Falcons, their right tackle, to go a little younger than McGlinchey. But I don't think we're going to spend a lot on a right tackle when we're already spending so much on our left tackle. I think we're probably going to try McKivitz and do what we've been doing later round drafting of developmental offensive linemen would be my thought.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of those pieces. I look at, I mean, a lot of people are talking about Jawan Taylor and from the Jags, and they're kind of pointing. I've heard some or content creators kind of point to the fact that he's more of a pass blocking. They don't really think that he blocks well on the run against the run. I honestly, I don't. I think it's very rare in today's NFL that you're gonna find somebody that does both well. And this whole tackle free agency class, there's no upgrades. I don't true upgrades to where you're gonna get a guy that does both well. McGarry might be, but I mean he was on a bad team, so who knows really what that is. And but Jawan Taylor, I would I honestly like that's a guy that I feel like you could bring in for cheaper, add some depth, and because he is kind of a little unknown, and but he could provide some depth at the very least. You know that he can pass block, and could you develop him as a run? He's more athletic than McGlinchey is for sure. So it's that's a guy that I feel like you could bring in, develop. You could still develop while maybe. I mean, who knows? He might show out in camp. Like, but that's a guy I think that you could bring in. I know that you would still be paying him probably 8, 9 mil, or even 10, to be honest. Uh, but yeah, I like that guy. Deron Payne is another guy that people have been bringing up that name a lot. I like Javon Hargrave better than I like Deron Payne, but I think Deron Payne gives us more of what the 49ers need, and which is really just somebody to plug up that middle. And they really need just a lot of people have been saying it, but that fire hydrant in the middle, somebody short, stout, basically what DJ Jones gave us. We really missed that this last season. So I want to see somebody in that vein, but I feel like they can get that in the later rounds of the draft. I'm not really thinking, and we don't know what Kalia Davis is. So he's still out there. We haven't seen him play a snap. So it's that's a whole interesting another topic. And I think that they may end up bringing back Ridgeway. Ridgeway is like I think I don't like the fact that he got hurt and we would want to bring him back, but it is what it is. Like so, and then my last guy that I'm kind of looking for in free agency is Nazir Adderley out of the Chargers at safety. He's a guy that's he looks the part of Jimmy Ward, and he kind of got out of favor with the coaching staff there. But 49ers love a reclamation project. He has the measurables, and he's a guy that didn't play bad. He's just not what they wanted. And I think that he could possibly fit in like a Tashawn Gibson and not be necessarily a world beater. He just ends up fitting into the system and kind of develops in the system. So I like Nazir. I think that's another younger guy that you could get for cheaper because I like youth. I'm not a big fan of bringing in on a Super Bowl ready team, bringing in older guys because it's I don't think that they need that. I think that they need you bring in older guys to bring in some leadership. I don't think the 49ers need leadership. I think they just need some horses going forward. And if they can get some, they've done it on the defensive line forever, bringing in those reclamation projects and letting Chris Kasserk do his thing. Like, why not bring in reclamation projects? See if you're coaching their coaching staff is one of the best, and you've got our new defensive coordinator whose strength is the secondary. So why not make take a flyer out on a guy like Nazir Adderley, maybe somebody younger that has the talent there, has the physical talent. He just needs to be coached up. I don't know. Do you know who Nazir Adderley? Have you ever seen Nazir Adderley? I barely watched any film of him, but but I think he's a guy that has potential.
Absolutely, yeah. And Steve Wilkes is the name you were looking for our new defensive coordinator. I think he'll do a really good job with our secondary. And I think we're going to need some help with Jimmy Ward leaving, Gibson probably retiring. Maybe not getting Mosley back right away for the beginning of the season, those types of things. So we're going to have a lot of holes in that secondary compared to what we had this season. I think, looking for safeties from anywhere makes sense. The Chargers obviously have, blanking on his name now, Derwin James, thank you, as their number one safety. So anybody next to him is going to look not nearly as good because he's arguably the best. I would think maybe we would look at, I don't know their contract status if either of them are available, but some of the safeties from the Panthers where Wilkes just came from. But I'm sure he's got his eye on a lot of different DBs around the league that are available. Obviously, another big one is Jesse Bates from the Bengals, but I don't think he will leave the Bengals. I think they'll probably franchise tag him again. I think he's good enough to deserve that second tag that starts to get punitively expensive. But
yeah,
I think he'll still stay there. So yeah, I like Nazir Adderley idea. That's I haven't watched a ton of him myself either, but I'll definitely check him out.
Yeah. It's just that we're just throwing out ideas at this point. But the one thing is that the 49ers are going to need some pieces like to plug up some of these holes. They don't have a lot of holes, but the holes that they have aren't easily filled from the people that they have in the building. I know a lot of people like Quantrez Knight, but we don't really know what it is. And I know that some people look at some of the other pieces that they've got like on this squad. But talking about your tight end spot, I was thinking about where did Kittle come from?
Iowa,
right? They have another guy that's in this year's draft. Looks very similar to Cal Kittle looked when he was coming out, in Sam Laporta. And he's probably going to go in that same range. Like, and it's going to be, I bet he's a good blocking. Like he's good at blocking. We don't know what he's going to be but they didn't know that Kittle was going to be Kittle when he came in. So I'll be interested. I'm going to pay more attention to that guy, especially during the combine. But he's slated right now to go in that same vein, that fourth, fifth round area. So that's another guy to keep an eye out for. But last question, real quick. Do the 49ers use all of their picks in the draft? Or did they trade up and down? Because last year, nobody thought that they were going to use all those picks.
Yeah. 11 is a lot. 11 is a lot, but we have a lot of holes. I mean, I think it'll depend on our free agency, on how many of our free agents we're able to retain. If we lose everyone who's a free agent, then yeah, we might need all 11 picks. But I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that we're going to fill some of these holes in free agency. We'll keep some of our free agents. Not all of them will leave. We'll get some good ones from other teams. And I think we'll package some of these picks to move up and get like a right tackle or a defensive end or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think that they're going to trade up. They're going to find a way to trade up into the second round and get an impact person. Don't know who that person's going to be, because they do need pieces. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the 49ers move. Like I said, they stay tight-lipped. They don't really talk too much. The things just happen. But yeah, I think that they package a couple, but I still think that they draft at least 8 people. That's my
right.
because I do think that they love. I think after this past season, they're gonna want to bring in a whole bunch of bodies to fill in some of those spots. I don't think that they knew that Samuel Womack was going to be because I think Samuel Womack kind of got a raw deal last season. It's good for the 49ers that he didn't have to start, but I thought that he's a player that could take a jump. I think that Drake Jackson. I think that there's a couple of people that I think that could take jumps this next season, and but I think that it would be wise of them to use those draft picks for depth pieces, just because of how good their coaching staff really is and how they've proven that they're good at just kind of coaching these guys up. How do you feel about
Yeah.
their coaching
No,
staff?
I think so. I think Steve Supremo had a comment there, little F them picks.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked to see us do that this season. Assuming that looks like Purdy's going to be ready to play. We got Lance and they're both, progressing. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Kyle use some of the future 2024 picks, either to move up in
Mm,
this draft or to get some of these, maybe to make a trade for a key position or something like that. So, and maybe it won't happen before the season starts. Maybe it happens by the trade deadline of 2023. But sometime between now and then, I would not be shocked to see us kind of do a Rams all-in type of move.
mm.
Because I think Kyle is tired of being on the doorstep. I think he wants to knock the door down, and we've
Yeah.
got the squad to do it.
Yeah. I kind of thought that that's what they were trying to do this year with CMC, but if they can make a move like that, I could see it just because, especially if Trey Lance comes out, and he is balling in the preseason and and in camp, I could see it. I could see it because I think that they think that they have something. Once again, it's gonna come down to what kind of game plan. Because if they try to do the same stuff that they did last year with Trey Lance, it's going to fail. I don't see a realm where all of a sudden Trey Lance is a good runner. That I just don't think that's his strong point. I think that they need to recognize that and work to his strengths. That's my personal opinion on it. Uh, but with that being said, we're gonna get out of here. I know that Ted's got somewhere to be also, but I appreciate you coming on today, Ted. Like, it's great talking to you. Great having everyone. Why don't you tell everybody one more time where they can find your channel and where they can find you on the socials?
Yeah, sure. It's right here in the info right here. Ted Talks Ball on YouTube. I forgot the at for the Ted H6 for Twitter, but I think most people know me from there. And then all49ers.com for articles written. I have an Instagram account, but like I said, it's mostly for folks that don't have YouTube. I prefer, if at all possible, please watch these videos on YouTube. It really helps us. And Pete, I really appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure having you on my show. I'm happy to be able to come here on Niner Fanatic Pod, and excited for our next opportunity to run it back again.
Oh yeah, and then we're both a part of the new that new venture, 49er Fighter 49er Podcast Network. Keep an eye out for that going forward, guys. Like, that's going to be a big one. We got a lot of good names on that. Niner Sickness is a part of it. Forever Faithful, Dion from Niner Gang, Ted, me, Gina repping the
Gina,
Bay. There's people I'm
Brandon,
forgetting. Yeah,
yeah,
Brandon, Forever
Brandon,
Faithful.
Anshul. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's a good crew, and I think
it's a
that's
good
going to be
crew.
Thursdays at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Pacific. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's what they're shooting for right now. Like, but look for that to grow, because I feel like we've got too much talent in that group, like for it not to grow. So it's be on the lookout for that, guys. And but one more time, you can find this on the Niner Fanatic podcast on YouTube. You can find it on Twitter. You can find it on Facebook. You can find it anywhere where you can get your audio podcast. I don't care where you get it, just get it. And don't forget to tell a friend so that we can be friends every day and every week. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for building this community, and because that's really what we're shooting for. And let me know, like, reach out to me, get in the comments. Let me know some people that you would like me to bring on the show, and I'm sure that goes for Ted too. Like, let us know. Give us your feedback so that we know what kind of content you guys want. But with that being said, we're going to get out of here. And I always like to leave it with Go Niners.
Go Niners.